Okay, guys, we're live. Welcome to the stream. How are we all doing tonight, huh? Good, good. Wednesday night, Go Green live stream, y'all. Let's see how it goes. Okay, that audio seems to be clear. We are live. So we got a fun episode lined up for the evening. You know, just trying to solve the world's problems. At least the world's ecological problems, one plastic bottle at a time. Here, guys. One at a time. That's the mentality. I think if we approach a lot of things like that, we can get out there and roll the bones. Turn the planet back into the once glorious garden it used to be. So guys, get your coffee out, get your tea out, cuddle up, get your snacks, get your smokes. Let's get to talking. Let's get to some solutions here. So this week there was just a ton of crazy articles that I saw that was mind-boggling to me about plastic. We're just such a culture that's so hooked on plastic. Hooked on it. Like we want to talk about drugs. You know, I can't think of a drug that we are more, even myself. I mean, all of us. I'm still guilty of it. I mean, I don't like virtue signaling at all because I'm just as much a part of the problem as everybody else. Or like I always say, even though these corporations are the main reason and main contributing factor to all this madness, I certainly am holding myself accountable. I am a pathetic weasel, little ant, little snake, as far as my dedication and determination to not using plastic at all. I mean, if we really want to be revolutionary about getting real and saving what's left of the ecosystem, plastic's gotta go. It's just gotta go because there's other alternatives. At least now there is. But there's no time left. So, I mean, it almost immediately has to stop. So this is Nat Geo. You can't go wrong here. National Geographic, you know, always going to be good information, good information coming out of them generally. So, you know, make sure you're reading up your Nat Geo stuff, guys. So get this, y'all. A whopping 91% of plastic isn't recycled. 91%, guys. Now that is an unfathomable number. Unfathomable. To me, it doesn't even seem possible because in most countries, you know, especially some more so than others. Like I know Germany's probably one of the strictest when it comes to, you know, recycling and making sure that the citizenry and everybody's doing their part. But yeah, even in America, I mean, almost everybody I know tries to recycle on some level. So the fact that it's 91% isn't recycled is fascinating to me. But it really isn't, because when you look into how much plastic is produced and how much it is in everything, you know, it's just recycling plastic bottles just is only a small fraction of the amount of plastic that's being produced, and you know, and obviously none of it's being recycled. So billions of tons of plastic have been made in the past decades. Much of it is becoming trash and litter. Yeah. So plastic bottles being recycled in Bangladesh. These are part of the 9% of plastic weight that does end up being recycled. Yeah, it's very small. So mass production of plastics, which began just 6 decades ago, has accelerated so rapidly that it's created 8.3 billion metric tons. Most of it in disposable products end up as trash. It seems like an incomprehensible quantity. And it is. Even the scientists who set out to conduct the world's first tally of how much plastic is produced, discarded, burned, or put in landfills were horrified by the sheer size of the numbers. Yeah, it's kind of, the numbers are just staggering. They're just staggering. It reminds me of the old George Carlin quote. Or not quote, but the joke. You know, maybe the only reason the mother Gaia or the earth let us exist and spawned us in the first place is because it needed plastic. Didn't know how to make it on its own. Needed us, created us to make the plastic. Now it's got the plastic. Which isn't the case. Yeah, I don't know how the earthly Gaian spirit entity operates. But it certainly isn't in ways that we can conceive or on timescales that we can conceive. The main thing with the plastic is that it's in our short term, it's lethal to us and to mammalian species and to fungal species and to plant species. So that's why it's got to stop. Okay, I digress. We all knew there would be a rapid and extreme increase in plastic production from 1950 until now, but actually quantifying the cumulative number for all plastic ever made, it was quite shocking, says Jenna Jane Baker, University of Georgia environmental engineer who specializes in studying plastic waste in the oceans. I think we need to do less studying and more getting to it. And the problem is with these university studies, they end up in like this feedback loop because the corporations and the government end up funding the studies, and you know, they give certain breaks or don't mention certain things in the study. But I think now everybody's just so fed up with it, or it's just at a point where it can't even be suppressed anymore of how damaging all this plastic is to the environment. Yeah, plastic takes more than 400 years to degrade. So most of it still exists in some form. Only 12% of it has been incinerated. The study was launched 2 years ago as scientists tried to get a handle on the gargantuan amount of plastic that ends up in the seas and the harm it's causing to birds, marine animals, fish. Prediction by the mid-century, the oceans will contain more plastic waste than fish, ton for ton. It's become one of the most quoted statistics and rallying cries to do something about it. You can't manage what you don't measure. The new study published Wednesday in the peer-reviewed journal Science Advances is the first global analysis of all plastics ever made and their fate. Of the 8.3 billion metric tons that has been produced, 6.3 billion metric tons has become plastic waste. Of that, only 9% has been recycled. The vast majority, 79%, is accumulating in landfills or slogging off the natural environment as litter. Meaning, at some point, much of it ends up in the oceans, the final sink. If present trends continue, by 2050 there will be 12 billion metric tons of plastic in landfills. That amount is 35,000 times as heavy as the Empire State Building. Roland Geyer, the study's lead author, says the team of scientists are trying to create a foundation for better managing plastic products. You can't manage what you don't measure, he says. It's not just that we're here to make a lot, we also make more year after year. Yeah, I mean, and with the exponential growth of how economies go, like, eventually, by 2040, we'll be producing more plastic in 1 year than we've produced in the last 50. Yeah, yikes. Half the resins and fibers used in plastics were produced in the last 13 years. The study found, right here, China alone accounts for 28% of the global resin, 68% of polyester, polymite, acrylic fibers. Yeah, but I love how we all just point fingers at each other. Well, China is the biggest one. Well, no, we're all doing it. It's like just kind of how we engineered society, or how the environment and unforeseen factors, as well as our own poor decision making, has created culture and society to mass consume. So it's not, it's not just China, it's not just the U.S. It's pretty much everybody everywhere, unless you're a poor soul in a third world country that is not consuming massive amounts of stuff every day. That being said, who's happier? industrial ecology professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara. He studied various metals and how they were used and managed. The rapid acceleration of plastic manufacturing was so far doubled at roughly every 15 years and outpaced nearly every other man-made material. And it's unlikely virtually every other material steel produced, for example, is construction for decades-long lifespan. Half of all plastic manufacture becomes trash in less than a year. Yeah, kind of scary, you know. It's and those poor third world nations are getting their environments destroyed too, and not even being able to do anything about it. Completely powerless to the situation, which is, you know, even makes it even sadder. Hey, Rebby's here. Yeah, that's why we really gotta deal with this problem. Tailing plastic waste around the globe. Yeah. So this is just going to go on and on here. We as society need to consider whether it's worth trading off some convenience for a clean, healthy environment. For some products that we are very problematic in the environment, maybe think about using different materials or phasing them out. Yeah, guys, I mean, we got to get real. You know, the production of novelty demands that we find something else. You know, I'm not saying shut off consumption and everybody go back to living in a cave. But I am saying we've got to get more, get kinder and get a little more empathetic with the universal situation of the eco catastrophe. And the biggest, the single most important thing we could do is get off of our addiction to plastic. And that being said, the second biggest thing we can do is, which again I'm gonna shout out Dane Wigington on this live stream every opportunity that I get, because he's been fighting the good fight out there for a lot longer than I have. For about 15 years, he's been over there at geoengineeringwatch.org talking about the climate engineers and geoengineering products of solar radiation management and spraying nanoparticulates into the atmosphere to try to combat some of this madness that we've caused. And that those type of programs need to also stop immediately, because they're causing way more damage. And it's, you know, the military industrial complex and big tech and big other big industry wide, you know, even the big energy guys, big oil guys are interested in that type of power to be able to manipulate and manage certain weather systems, you know, and try to control atmospheric amounts of radiation that we get from the sun. So definitely as close to playing God as you can get, you know, since development of nuclear warheads in the 1940s. So we're there. It's the same people causing the same problems as usual, which leads us to our next article here, which talks about the fossil fuel guys, the big oil companies. You know, these are the people we really need to hold accountable. First, we need to hold ourselves accountable, and every single human being can do that instantly by just actively trying to, not even by half, by one third, let's just say. By 1/3, if you personally can reduce the amount of oil you use, electricity you use, plastic, everything, just reduce it by 1/3. That makes a massive impact as a ripple effect if more and more people get on board with that. So once you've done that personally for yourself, and, you know, once you're getting everybody you know excited about that, I think then you can start organizing and start holding these companies accountable, and, well, you know, just at least calling them out constantly. So Kate Cullen does this one here. I mean, we know who it is, right? So, I guess. A groundbreaking study published today in Environmental Research Letters links the area burned by forest fires and increases in drought and fire danger conditions to heat-trapping emissions from the largest global carbon producers. The new analysis, led by experts at the Union of Concerned Scientists, UCS, the fossil fuels behind forest fires, found that 19.8 million acres burned, 37% of the total area scorched by the forest fires in the western United States and southwestern Canada since 1986. can be attributed to heat trapping emissions traced to the world's 88 largest fossil fuel producers and cement manufacturers. Emissions from these companies also contributed to nearly half of the observed increase in conditions that raised the risk of large, severe forest fires across the region since 1901. Yeah, I mean, obviously, these companies are causing the trees and forests to go up in flames. And it's not just that either. Like I just said, Dane Wigington, go check them out. geoengineeringwatch.org. It's the chemical spraying from the air too that they're doing, and it's also acidifying the ocean. So, Robbie, we don't like acidified oceans. I mean, we're not aquatic animals, but at the end of the day, it's not good for anybody. We don't want that, do we? Do we want that? Nah, bro. Nah, we don't want that. This study represents a significant breakthrough in attribution science directly linked to wildfire destruction. Okay, see, I had a hard time when I first read this. I had a hard time understanding this too. So again, the 19, because there's a lot of natural fires that occur too. But so found that 19.8 million acres burned. 37% of the total area scorched by forest fires in the western United States and southwestern Canada since 1986 can be attributed to heat trapping emissions traced to the world's 88 largest fossil fuel producers and cement manufacturers. So quite a bit. Yeah, I do. We just we're going to continue to donate and be aware of these horrible fires going on over here. I feel like they're getting hit the worst up there. But plastic pollution, guys. And the companies producing this plastic are these companies too. They are the fossil fuel companies. Plastic is oil. Let's make no mistake. The oil runs the world, right? So when I say addiction to plastic, I really should be saying addiction to oil. But that being said, like using oil to power our cars and heat our homes and stuff like that, that type of technology is increasingly getting more efficient. Even though eventually we want to get away from it completely. There's just no way. It's an impossibility to stop completely unless having a complete societal breakdown. So sadly, in the short term, the cars and the trucks and jets and trains and the whole our systems for heating our homes has to remain oil. But what we can do is stop creating plastic. And I'm not sure what percentage of this report seems super dramatic here from these guys over here at say.org. Say that 80%. Like, what is this? This is the Pokemon card, like a damage ability modifier. 80%. Give me a break. That sounds insane. It just sounds like daydreaming unless they're serious. I mean, you read one article where it's doom and gloom. 91% isn't recycled. And then other articles say, oh yeah, we're doing a great job recycling. We can do it by 80% by 2040. So you never really get the real thing. That's why everything you read or hear you have to take with a grain of salt. But I do believe that not this number. Because we are just so heavily addicted to it. But like anything else, if we work at it a little bit each day, we can definitely do some work, do some good. But 80%, yeah. So I think by reducing the amount we use also is the key. But number one thing is preventing the pollution part. Recycling what we do use is really important. And doing everything in our power to make sure that this doesn't end up in the local community or in the ocean or in the pond. Because at this rate, this is going to be your home. This is what your home is. You know, when society collapses and there's nothing left, this is where you'll be sleeping, on some sort of pile of trash that the human race created in its hubris. You know, it doesn't look very kind and inviting. So let's take a look and see what they have to say here, where they get this number from. 80%, huh? So, plastic pollution could reduce by 80% by 2040 if countries and companies make deep policy and market shifts using existing technologies, according to a new report by UN Environment Program, UNEP. The report is released ahead of a second round of negotiations in Paris on a global agreement to beat plastic pollution, and outlines the magnitude and nature of the changes required to end plastic pollution and create a circular economy. Turning off the tap, how the world can end plastic pollution and create a circular economy is a solutions-focused analysis of concrete practices, market shifts, and policies that can inform the government thinking business action. So yeah. Super interesting here, guys. Policy. What's the most important of these three? Like, how many articles are we going to read like this every year that end up formalizing into nothing? So, policy doesn't seem to work to hold the corporations or governments accountable, or economists. Practices don't really seem to work either. Like, we put into practice, we create the government agencies to then enforce the policies. On market shifts, I think this is really the only key thing we should really focus on here. What kind of market do we need to create where we revolutionize completely what and how we consume? How do we get people excited about it? And I think how you do it, and there's a ton we talked about it in previous episodes, is get them excited about botany, get them excited about mycelium, and we can build. The good earth gives us everything we need. Indigenous peoples understand this a lot better than the Western mind. We've got to get more creative with what the earth is already providing for us, in ways that I think, I don't know, it's hard to get people excited when you say it's market shifts. How are you going to get people excited? Convenience. The oil is easy. It's something we've been hooked on for so long, and as far as I know, I'm not an engineer or anything like that. There's nothing in the current reality that can replace it. But it has to stop. So here we are, one of these things. So, but I do think it's real easy. Like Terence McKenna says, just do legalize the Plant and Vegetable Act. Make it an initiative, and governments of the world empower people to grow their own stuff and create technologies and invent new ways of, growing mycelium and creating mutations of it that can get better and better at solving problems. Plants, botanists, arborists, trees. Let's replant the forests and pay the people that want to get active in doing that to do that. Let's organize and shift the market. Let's shift the market towards that, and incentivize it, and then create strict penalties on these companies, to the threat of basically dissolving the company and create. I don't want to say, because communism is awful, just like all ideology mostly of the past couple centuries has been. Same thing with capitalism. I don't want to say have a government takeover of the corporation, but more be like a worker co-op of the corporate. If these companies don't want to play ball, you come in and you take a certain percentage of the business for of the revenue, until they meet the demands, and then that revenue immediately goes towards these preventative institutions and these new shifting markets that we create, to save and reverse and restore the ecosystem and the earth. Come on, Robbie. What are you doing? Robbie, hey, come on. No. What is it with you? Even Robbie, my cat is addicted to plastic. Robbie, how addicted to plastic are you? Come tell the stream how addicted to plastic you are. He's so addicted to plastic. If there is any plastic around this house, he finds it and chews it and is obsessed with it. What a crazy world. And I try to keep as little plastic in the house as possible, but I mean, it's just you wouldn't think so, but it's in everything. So it's like, goodness. I think hemp is really the answer. Hemp is really the answer. I really believe that. Hemp and fungi. That's the famous Jack Herrera quote. One of the great early pioneers of cannabis legalization and cultivation here in the States, or recultivation, I guess you could say. I don't know if hemp can save the world, but I do know that it's the only thing that can. Not just as a medicinal plant use, but just industrial and spiritual. There's so much to it. But I digress. The way we produce, use, and dispose of plastics is polluting ecosystems, creating risks for human health, and destabilizing the climate, said Inger Anderson, UNEP Executive Director. This UNEP report lays out the roadmap to dramatically reduce these risks through adopting a circular approach that keeps plastics out of ecosystems, out of our bodies, and in the economy. That's, well, I don't know. With sentences like that, and just lead me to believe that this is more of a non-solution article. This is more daydreaming, and nothing really happens. And then they end it with environmental wins. Like, well, we've been talking about this for a while. Where are all the wins? I continue to see L's. Like L. This is. So you're telling me in the past, at least, let's just say a decade. In the past decade, after getting serious about knowing all this, or at least in America, since President Obama took office in 2008, when he created all these initiatives, with supposedly hope and change for the medical system, for unemployed people, for transparency within the government with corporations and closing that revolving door, and then, obviously environmental stuff, workers' rights. None of that occurred. None of it. And then now, obviously, none of it occurred with Trump, duh. And then now Biden, well, double duh, of course not. So it doesn't matter who it is. These same presidents, they're all the same real smiling face and bad actor. And I do read a lot of these articles that are just wishy-washy. And it's like, but it does need to be drilled into our heads. So reuse, promoting reuse options, including refillable bottles, bulk dispensing, deposit return packaging take-back schemes can reduce 30% of plastic pollution by 2040. To realize the potential, governments must help build a stronger business in case for reusables. This has to happen. Obviously, we can't just wait for top down. Start doing it today yourself, guys. Reduce, reuse, restore, recycle it. I know it could be a pain in the butt. It could be a real pain in the States. They don't make it easy, and they don't really give you much of a return for doing it or incentivize to do it, but recycle as much as you can. Reorient and diversify. Yeah, definitely, Talk about alternative ones, just like I was saying. Hemp products. Check it out. Let's do it. If you do plan on starting a business, don't put profit first. Don't be motivated by profit at all. Put the business first. The business goal should be restoring the planet. And if you make a profit in the effort, then great. But the profit, I think that should be the number one thing here. Reduce the profit, take away the profit motive, and rename it in a way where it's going to be the recycle motive, where you're not going to necessarily make a profit, but what you'll be raising the standard of living universally and repairing and restoring so much of the ecological damage that will be where your value comes from, not from ones and zeros in a bank on an app at a bank somewhere, hypothetically, right? Or in assets that like planes, trains, automobiles, real estate, boats. We need to rethink the profit motive. That needs to be number one here. But I digress. That's my idea. Create a different form of capitalism, or a different form of incentivizing people, and promoting good, promoting good ecological decision making. So yeah, 65 billion investments cost for recommended systemic change are significant, but below the spending without the systemic change. USD 65 billion per year as opposed to 113 billion per year. Much of this can be mobilized by shifting planned investments from new production facilities no longer needed through reduction in material needs, or a levy on virgin plastic production into the necessary circular infrastructure. Yet time is of the essence. A 5-year delay may lead to an increase of 80 million metric tons of plastic pollution by 2040. Yeah. I mean, this is all good, well and good, and we're doing all this. And this number seems unrealistic unless we change something as significant as the profit motive and move away from a materialistic view of society and a Cartesian materialist worldview. I encourage you to check out Rupert Sheldrake, just another great author and philosopher. It's got a ton of good stuff out there, very similar to Terence McKenna. So, speaking of, which this leads us directly into our next topic of the night, which is questions from people like you or I, that if we were to go see Terence if he was alive today, what we would ask him. And so now they're going to talk about one of the other OGs of the, let's just call it memosphere, the Terence McKenna memosphere, or his gravity, that the people that he was most closely related to, or whose ideas are most similar, was Alfred North Whitehead. So go ahead and do that. So somebody asks, hi, I got your software and I started to read the book. I got to ask you, how did this ascent into novelty? Is that easy to get to novelty? You mean, why not ascent? Why not an ascent? And can you say more about the context of North Whitehead and the period of time we're in right now? So Terence is always talking about the descent into novelty. And this person asked, why don't you call it an ascent into novelty? Terence's and North Whitehead's whole thing is that novelty producing, the universe is a novelty producing engine, and it's infinitely it becomes more and more complex, and it descends instead of ascending. So I digress, but so this is Terence talking now, responding to the question. Okay, first of all, why a descent into novelty rather than an ascent? It was my thing to do as I wanted to do it. And it seemed to me, the way I thought of time was, I thought of it like a river. And so I thought of it as flowing toward its lowest level. And I thought of history as a river and eternity as the ocean. So naturally, history flows downhill to reach eternity. I also like the fact that when the descent in elevation is rapid, the descent into elevation is rapid, the river runs faster. And when the landscape is almost flat, the river broadens out and meanders. So it was to preserve this idea of time as fluid. The other reason is a mathematical reason. It has to do with the fact that if we have a novelty moving downward, then the maximum of novelty is 0. If we have novelty moving upward, the maximum of novelty is just some very large number, and that's not very appealing. Now, you said to talk a little bit more about this time as we're passing. Well, one thing I didn't mention in the talk, because I take it for granted that you've studied my thing, which is a lot to presume, there are resonances in my theory. It's not simply that it's either novelty or habit. There are resonances between one time and another time. And the time we are in right now is a very strong resonance to the middle 10th century. In a sense, we are emerging from the Dark Ages. It's not good to push the analogy too hard because many times are intersecting. But in an ordinary theory of history or a theory of causality, the most important moment before this one is the moment immediately preceding this one. My thing says something different. It says, no, each moment in time is kind of an inner reference pattern made up of other times. Some near, some far, and their relationship is not linear. And that's why we suddenly get a burst of Egyptian-style furniture, or suddenly a lot to talk about Judy Blake, or suddenly a remake of the story of Achilles, or fashion, or ebb and flow of mass deception. It's based on a feeling, the zeitgeist. And the zeitgeist carries these messages from many times in many places. And there was a third part. So yeah, he's talking about the descent into novelty and how everything is a novelty-producing engine. And now, Terence, we're going to talk about Alfred North Whitehead, who was Terence's, inspiration, as well as the I Ching, which was Terence's model. We've talked about this before. The Chinese I Ching, his model for his time wave theory, which is very similar to what he's talking about here, the time wave theory, where you kind of have intersecting. Time is a wave, and you have intersecting patterns. Well, people think of Alfred North Whitehead as somewhat obscure and stuffy guy, just because he was English and it was the 1920s. And guess he didn't do a lot of bong rips or something. But if you read Process and Reality, I strongly urge you to read this book. It's not easy, but you don't need a Sanskrit dictionary, and you don't need to take up residence down at the ashram and sweep up. Whitehead has a language that he speaks, and he talks of feelings as the primary datum of reality. Feelings is the primary datum. The felt feeling, felt presence of immediate experience in the now is the primary datum of reality. And he talks about time is moving towards what he calls concrescence. And he talks about the complex systems, such as organizations or a human being, as the nexus of actual occasions. Well, I just find his vocabulary and his way of thinking about things and his mathematical rigor to be tremendously appealing. If you take Whitehead to be your breast, you don't have to hang your head in front of anybody because his mathematics is impeccable. He is one of the greatest mathematical thinkers of the 20th century, so it's a very solid foundation that will support a very psychedelic view of how reality works. So, yeah, he's talking about Alfred North, and please do. Read his read Processes in Reality. And quote, "We diverge from Descartes by holding what he has described as primary attributes of physical bodies are really the forms of internal relationships between actual occasions. Such a chance of thought is the shift from materialism to organic realism as a basic idea of physical science." So that just basically means an approach to philosophy that identifies processes, changes, or shifting relationships as the only real experience of everyday living, in opposition to the classical view of change as illusory, accidental process philosophy. So definitely check out Alfred North Whitehead and his book, Process and Reality. It is the antithesis to Descartes' materialist views. And it's revolutionary in science, I think, and we kind of need to get with it. So, all right, guys, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. Go check out all the recommendations. Like I said, hit up Dane's YouTube, watch his content, drop a like and subscribe over there. Get involved with as much Terence McKenna stuff as you can, and most importantly, reduce the amount of plastic that we're consuming, guys. That's key, even more so than recycling it. Because you don't even have to recycle it if you use less of it to begin with. So that's how we become part of this 80% goal by 2040. Because at this current rate, like this Nat Geo, I mean, I trust them as far as the source goes, and data. If it's true that 91% of plastic isn't being recycled, I mean that's it's insane. It's fascinating and it's devastating, and definitely one of the bigger problems that we face as a whole. So, like I said, I'm not advocating for you guys to shut your cars off and shut your houses down and move out into the middle of the woods and into a yurt. Because I do know in the short term that the power that fuels the modern world and human society is oil until we can figure something else out. But what we can do is reduce the amount of plastic that we use, because we need oil to get where we're going right now, but there's a ton of other replacements for plastic, guys. So just use them. Use them. If you're starting businesses, use them. Take the extra hit on the cost, like I said. It doesn't have to be all about profit all the time. Let's make the right decisions. So thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. Love you. Remember, live that green revolution, y'all.